Yes, ma'am.
The Bible says that I was predestined to follow Christ, to love God. And how is it possible there are people that God knew when he created them that they weren't going to follow him? So these people are like doomed to eternal suffering. How is that possible? What are your views?
All right, I disagree with the thought that says I was predestined to believe in Christ, and that person over there was predestined to reject Christ. When I was last speaking at Stanford University out in Northern California, I met a religion professor who was very bitter against Christ, very bitter against the Bible. And I found out that growing up, this religion professor had a brother and he had a father who was a minister. And his father, who was a minister, one day looked into the faces of his two boys and he said to one of them, "You are predestined to go to heaven." And he said to this guy who's a religion professor at Stanford, "You are predestined to go to hell." Man, that is so inaccurate. That is so cruel. It's scary. Jesus clearly says in John 3:16, "For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have eternal life." And Peter writes in 2 Peter chapter 3, "God is not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance." So I have a strong disagreement with anybody who says the Bible teaches that God predestines this person to go to hell. No, ma'am, I cannot disagree with that more strongly. Yes, sir. I am trying to rip apart the smoke screen that people put between themselves and Christ.
In my afterlife, I'll worry about that later. This life right now, I'll worry about right now.
I can't put my trust in something that was written 2,000 years ago.
And a bunch of us are running away from God, are running away from Christ as fast as we can.
You must save yourself. No one will do it for you.
Maybe what you believe or I believe is the misinterpretation.
Don't take it from me. Go to the source document, the Gospels, and read about Jesus for yourself. If you genuinely want to know Christ, he's not going to play hide and seek with you. You'll find him. Yes, sir.
You just said whoever. So how do you answer the question when people say, well, what about the pygmies, or what about this nation who nobody's told them about Christ? I mean, what is the answer for them as far as them getting to heaven or being able to stand before a just and pure holy God, like you mentioned to that one gentleman?
Great question. Great question is, how is God going to judge those who've never had the opportunity to hear about Jesus? I do not know, because Jesus never specifically addressed the question. But the Bible and Jesus make 5 points that apply to your excellent question. First point, Jesus revealed that God's character is just, which means all of us will be judged uniquely, fairly, and justly. Nobody's going to get ripped off. Second point, nobody is going to hell because of ignorance. No one's going to hell because they were born at the wrong time in the wrong part of the world. No. The only reason people are going to hell is because they choose to live their life separate from God. And on the day of judgment, God will grant their request, and they will spend eternity separate from God. Not because that's what God wants, but because God respects their unique individuality and grants their request. Third point, the Bible insists that there are going to be a lot of people in heaven who never had the opportunity to hear about Jesus. Hebrews chapter 11 lists some of these people by name. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Rahab, a Gentile prostitute. Obviously, they never heard about Jesus. They were born hundreds of years before him. But in humility, they put their faith in God, and they're going to be in heaven. Fourth point, the only reason those folks will be in heaven, the only reason any of us will be in heaven, Jesus insisted, is because he bled and died on a cross to pay the penalty for our wrongdoing. Abraham is not going to be in heaven because he followed the law. He didn't follow the law. He wimped out on his wife, said to Pharaoh, she's my sister, so you can have her to be your wife. The guy was a coward. The guy was a sinner. The only reason Abraham's going to be in heaven is because he put his faith in God. Fifthly and finally, although I do not specifically know how God will judge those who've never heard about Christ, I do know that all of us here have more than ample opportunity to read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John for ourselves, to examine the evidence pointing to Christ's reliability. So you, sir, and I, we are responsible for what we do with Jesus. And I can trust the God whom Jesus revealed, who is so fair, so compassionate, it's incredible, to judge those people fairly.
Why is it more rational to believe that God exists than that he doesn't?
Okay. All right, good. Thank you for asking that. Why do I feel it's far more reasonable to believe that God exists than to believe that God does not exist? For the following reasons. First point. I cannot prove to anybody here that you have a rational mind. But the order of the way you speak, the order of the way you dress, convinces me that between your two handsome ears, there is a rational mind. So although I cannot prove that you have a rational mind, the evidence of the way you articulate so clearly, so cogently, the evidence of the way you dress in such an orderly way, convinces me that indeed you have a mind. Similarly, the evidence of the order and design of the human eye, the central nervous system, the quote, laws of nature, unquote, convinces me that it's far more reasonable to believe that behind this cosmos there's an intelligent mind than for me to believe that behind the cosmos there's no intelligent mind.
Why does the cosmos seem orderly to you? There's only one civilized planet Earth. If you go to Jupiter or something, it doesn't seem too orderly.
Good question. Why does the cosmos seem orderly to me? I'll tell you why. Because my brother's a transplant surgeon at the University of Wisconsin Medical Center. And I can promise you, if he transplants a liver for a heart or a kidney for a lung, he will face a malpractice suit second to none. You and I know very, very well that we believe in the order and design of the human body. And that's why we go to doctors when we're really sick, because we're convinced that those doctors have studied the amazing order and design of the human body. That's why we pay as much money as we do. So for someone to try and argue there is no order and design to the human body, to the world that we live in, I would say, okay, fine. Then don't go running to a hospital when you get really sick.
So you're saying basically that human beings imply a designer. Because I'm ordered, I imply someone who has designed me.
Correct.
But doesn't a designer have to be designed too, unless he's not ordered?
Okay, good question. The question is, well, doesn't this designer, this intelligent mind, have to be designed as well? Obviously, the Bible answers that question by saying, God is eternal. Now, intellectually, I don't know about that. That's a little hard for me to swallow. What helps me is to consider the options to the question, what is eternal? What was around in the beginning? I only know 4 options. If you know of another one, please tell me. First option, in the beginning, there was nothing. That great philosopher, Mary Poppins, answers that first one beautifully when she sings, nothing comes from nothing. Nothing ever could. You never get something from nothing. It's impossible. Second option, in the beginning, there was matter and energy. The reason I cannot accept that is because my experience of love, justice, moral indignation over atrocities convinces me there's a lot more to reality than matter and energy. There are real values, intangible, unseen values that I experience every day. Very big part of my life. There's more to reality than matter and energy. My experience confirms that every single day. Third option, in the beginning there was an intelligent mind. Created this complex watch, stepped back, and could give a rip. That's deism. Thomas Jefferson, Einstein flirted with it. Makes sense to me. Fourth option, in the beginning there's an intelligent mind, creates the complex cosmos, but actually loves you and loves me. You and I matter to him. That is what Jesus Christ insisted was accurate.
And all these 4 options are equally rational.
Equally rational?
Yeah.
Something comes from nothing?
Well, believing in a superior being that's eternal, I don't like like you said, something coming from nothing, well, you don't see it all around you, so it's probably not true. Could be, but it's probably not, is the way I understand your thinking. Well, sure, I don't see anything eternal around me. It could be true that there is a God, but by the same logical consistency, I don't see it around me. It's never occurred in nature. Probably not. It's equally rational that something comes from nothing than that there is a God.
No, it is not at all.
Well, where have you seen an eternal being? How's that consistent with what your life says?
It's real simple. If I take you to Mount Rushmore, and you and I stand there, and we look up at Mount Rushmore, and I say, wow, isn't it incredible the way the water carved out the heads of Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln, and Roosevelt? That is an amazing accident up there on Mount Rushmore. You would be outraged. If you go down to breakfast in the morning and your cereal box of alphabets has fallen over, and right in front of your chair are written the words, please wash the dishes. It'd be outrageous to think that the letters just fell into order that way. Every time you and I see order and design, if we push it back far enough, there's got to be some type of intelligent mind behind it all. That's a no-brainer. The building. I mean, is it plausible to believe that that's a result of a cyclone passing through a brickyard? No. There's got to be an architect and a builder behind that building.
Wait a sec. The reason you discounted, I agree with that, but the reason you discounted something coming from nothing is because you said it's not consistent with what you see around you. Mm-hmm. Similarly, an eternal being is not consistent with what we see around us. I'm not saying...
How?
Do you see an eternal being?
No, I've never... Have you ever seen love?
No, I haven't.
No, you haven't. So what's your point?
My point is, believing in, okay, do you believe, when you say God, I assume you mean someone who's eternal and all-powerful, right? I don't see anything.
No, forget about eternal. That was another issue you introduced into our discussion. The first question you asked me was, why do I believe in God? I was answering that question, and you interjected the issue of eternality.
I thought that was implied in
No, it's not implied.
Of God.
You asked me, why do I believe there's a God? My first piece of evidence is, because 100 times out of 100 in my experience of life, order and design never come about by accident. They only come about as a result of an intelligent mind bringing that order and that design together. I never once mentioned eternality.
Yeah, but the notion of the incredibility of that situation of a high order against a background of disorder only makes sense because you have that background of disorder. What other universe are you referring to when you evoke the incredibility of the high order of this universe? What's your background comparison? Just speculation, imagination?
No. My background evidence is comparing UT Austin with Texas A&M. Lots of order here, lots of chaos in College Station.
Be serious for a sec.
I'm having a hard time taking you seriously, your line of thinking right now. You got to be kidding me. I don't have to see a cosmos where there is no order at all in order then to understand that I have order here. That's totally fallacious thinking. I live in this world, and in this world there's a lot of disorder and a lot of chaos, and there's a lot of order. And from my experience, I know that every time I am confronted by order in this universe, in my universe that I live in, my corner, it comes about as a result of an intelligent mind. I don't have to experience some cosmos where there's no order at all in order to understand that I've got order here.
That's because you're so tied up in your interpretation that you haven't really examined your bases for it.
No, it's because you're playing an intellectual game that I refuse to jump into with you.
You're making a bad analogy. The analogy of an ordered universe versus some kind of whatever.
The whole point is it's not a totally orderly universe. There's a lot of chaos in this universe. There's a lot of chaos in his life. There's a lot of chaos in my life. There's a lot of order in his life. There's a lot of order in my life. What I'm saying to him is, sir, check it out. The order that you see, does that order come about by chance or does it not? Take 10 pennies, number them 1 to 10, drop them in your left pocket. Pull them out sequentially 1 to 10. I'm not going to hold my breath waiting for you to pull it off. The shirt that you wear, does it come out of a tornado passing through a cotton field, or does it come about as a result of an intelligent mind, a tailor, putting your shirt together? That's all I'm appealing to, your experience of life. Now you're asking me to experience a life in a universe where there is no order, to really understand chaos. I can't do that. I can't base my decisions on that. That's why I gave you the lousy illustration of College Station in Austin, because you're raising a ridiculous point.
No,
totally absurd.
You were talking about the miracle of an ordered universe.
No, I wasn't. I was asking the question, is it more reasonable to believe that behind order and design there's an intelligent mind, or is it more reasonable to believe behind order and design is chaos and chance? That's all I asked you to do.
But how are you grounded in being able to say that this universe is ordered and designed?
I already answered that.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did.
The whole issue is design. You're assuming design.
I'm not assuming design. My brother transplants kidneys and livers into bodies that have failing kidneys and livers. And if my brother goes into a human body and puts a liver where a heart should go, he will be sued out of his practice.
That's right. That's an ordered system. But
That's right, it is.
But how does that prove the existence of Yahweh? I don't see the connection.
That was not the question. The question is, why do you believe that God exists? And I said, the first reason that I believe God exists is because it is far more reasonable for me to believe that behind order and design there's an intelligent mind than it is reasonable for me to believe behind order and design is an accident.
It's reasonable because you're making a bad analogy.
No, it's not bad analogies.
You're making an analogy between the universe and relations within that universe of order
No,
and chaos.
what I'm telling you is the only way I can make decisions is by looking at my experience in life and by using my mind. And you're asking me to have an experience outside of this universe. That's intellectually dishonest. That is so intellectually dishonest, it's irrational. Totally irrational. I can't have an experience outside of this universe. Because guess what, guys? I live in this universe. I don't live outside of this universe.
That's my point.
You can't even have an
Well,
experience.
what's your point? You have no point.
Then how can you step outside of this universe and evaluate its design master? You see what I'm saying?
No,
How
I
can you
don't see what
evaluate
you're
its
saying. In nature, I see order and design. And now I've got to ask them the question, is it more reasonable to believe behind order and design is an intelligent mind, or is it more reasonable to believe behind order and design is an accident? That's a no-brainer, guys. A no-brainer. If you limit reality to matter and energy, all that you are is a highly intricate biochemical reaction in your brain. That's all I am.
That doesn't mean there's no me. Just because that's all I am doesn't mean that there's no me.
Well, what is me?
What are you? I don't know. What are you?
No, you answered. I said, what is me? When you say me, what are you talking about?
Me is my experiences, my thoughts, my feelings.
Which is all a biochemical reaction, ma'am. Your brain secretes thought the same way a liver secretes bile. It's all matter and energy. That's all it is. If you reduce reality to matter and energy, that's all you've got.
Okay.
There's no me. There's no you. There's no I that stands separate from the biochemical reaction. If you reduce reality to matter and energy, you got to stay there. That's all there is.
But, okay.
Now, you can get sentimental and say, I got a sex drive for her. I'm going to call it love. All right, love is real. It's not real. It's a sex drive for her that I call love. I love my 3 little boys. I'll get real, Cliff. You have a drive as a parent to protect your 3 little boys. Because all of reality is matter and energy. That's all there is. There's no value of caring, being compassionate. That's why the Duke University student was so on the target when he said, sure, Cliff, I'll tell you why Mother Teresa works among the dying in Calcutta. To preserve the genetic pool. My experience violates that. My experience is Mother Teresa is capable of looking at a dying person and saying, wow, I want to do something painful. I want to sacrifice so that that person can live. That's compassion. That's caring. Ma'am, that's part of my experience.
Okay. Assuming that when I was born, I was nothing but my genetic codes. That's all I had to go on, okay? Every experience that I have and the interaction between that experience and my genetic propensities creates something, okay? And that thing, when it interacts with more experiences, creates something. All these things build up to the person that I am right now. I'm much more of a person now than I was the day I was born. I didn't have thoughts. I could feel pain.
You're not a person.
I could feel desires.
You're a more complex biochemical reaction. I'll give you that.
That's a more complex person.
Not person, more complex biochemical reaction.
Person is just...
Machine.
What does person mean? This person, can you only be a person if There's a God? Is that
Yeah,
what
that's
you're saying?
right. You can only be a person if there's a God. Because person implies personality. Person implies individuality. Person implies free will.
But there
Person
doesn't have to
implies,
be a God.
hey man, I'd like to be your friend. Hey man, I hate your guts, get lost. Person implies he can choose to blow me away or he can choose to love and respect me. That's what personality, personhood implies. And if all I am is a complex biochemical reaction, then I don't choose to blow him away. I don't choose to respect him. I simply do what my complex biochemical reaction programs me to do.
Animals have
How's
what?
that different from like parenting drives? Like you count it since drives, and then you counterpose your own ideas of feelings. And I don't really see the difference. I mean, if you say that protecting your kids is a drive, or it could be understood as a drive, or as a some other kind of feeling, I still don't see what's the difference. Because if I feel this thing, the next guy maybe his biochemical reaction doesn't make him love his kids or something like that. You could call those both drives, or you could call them just choices of life or feelings or something like that. I still don't see the difference between what's the difference between a drive? You call him a drive, you call him, personally, I think that these are really products of the physical complexity of life, and really, if you want to call this that we're not individuals, then so be it. I'm happy with being part of the universe as a piece more, but I think it's just the complexity of the system that doesn't allow us to understand things in a micro, analyzing it little by little how it all happens. But you just have to look at the big picture and say, well, this person, he's a good person, he's a bad person. You cannot go into analyzing what leads to what in every possible detail. We just don't have the capacity. It doesn't mean it's not real. It's not underlying the whole system.
Okay, but all I'm saying to this lady is, look at your experience of life. Obviously, what I'm banking on is that she's experienced love. Not just from mom and dad, not just from a guy who thinks she's beautiful and cute. I'm banking on the fact that she has experienced love from a person who didn't have some ulterior drive, but who just chose to freely love her and be compassionate and help her.
But I say that's a drive too. I say that love is one more drive that we feel. Compassion is another drive that we feel. I think those analyze just as well as the sexual desire.
All right, but I would argue that person who showed compassion on her didn't have to do that. They freely chose to do that.
Well, that's an assumption that they're free to do that. I don't know that ultimately we are really free, or we're just so complex that we think we're free.
If there is no God, we're not free, is my whole point. If there is no God, we are not free. We are simply programmed reactions.
So you would like
that is
to...
possible. If you look at history, we haven't really advanced that much. We still kill each other in the same manner we ever did, and things have not changed that much.
Okay, but my experience of life is that I am really free. I can knock his head off right now, or I can not knock his head off right now. I don't think I have to do either. All right? And I really think that none of you can live out your worldview if it's an atheist worldview. What I mean is this. If I hold back, slap her in the face, and you turn to me and say, hey man, why'd you do that? And I say, because I had to. You're not going to buy that.
We wouldn't do that.
You're going to say, no, you freely chose to slap her in the face. We're going to hold you responsible for slapping her in the face. Well, why do you hold me responsible for anything if I don't have free will, if I just have to do what I do?
Because that'll make people realize that they can be going around doing these things. It has an utilitarian value. I think.
Which means you believe that in reality we really do have free will. And if you threaten me enough with enough prison, it'll make me say, whoa, I don't think I'll slap her this time.
No, I think that you'll obey certain complex laws that are beyond my understanding and yours probably, that say that if in this circumstance it's not going to pay for you to do that. That's all. So you're just following certain things. I'm just saying, this is kind of ludicrous to say that, because really what I'm saying is that the complexity of the chain of events is beyond your or my understanding, and simply you cannot see it, and you perceive that as free choice. But I don't think that creates a morality. That simply creates.
Fine. So what I hear you saying is, Cliff, you've got to understand, you don't really have free will, but you have an incredibly complex biochemical reaction, more complex than we could understand. Fine. But if what you say is right, if you sincerely believe what you just said to me, then don't hold me responsible for what I choose to do, because there's no me that chooses. I just have this incredibly complex mechanism. That's all I am. And when the girl says, I love you, realize what she really means is, I'm a machine and I have to be attracted to you. So don't get excited about her free choice to love you. Just realize it's all a highly complex, determined reaction.
I enjoy that state of affairs. I do believe that that's what's happening. I think it's perfectly fine to be part of the universe in that matter.
My experience totally violates that. My experience is, I can really have a racist attitude towards him right now. Or I can really respect him. I don't have to do either. And if I have a racist attitude towards this gentleman now, tonight when I sit on the corner of my bed, I can involve myself in self-reflection, self-perception. And I can judge myself. And I can say, you know, Cliff, when you had that racist attitude today, that was really wrong. Make sure you don't do it again tomorrow. I am free to judge myself. And I do it on a regular basis. That's my experience of life.
You've chosen that because you've examined the evidence, correct? Okay, and that is because Christ has for you provided the most lucid delineation of what God is. So
No. The reason I trust Jesus is not because he's given me a lucid definition of God. The reason I trust Jesus is because of his lifestyle, teachings, death, and resurrection.
Okay, sorry. Fine then. But does that mean that there is no other reliable sources, or are you picking the most reliable? Or, okay. I mean, if somebody, say, you're reliable, but this guy's reliable as well, does that mean you're 60% reliable, he's 40% reliable? Does that mean I run with all of what you have and nothing good with, even though he may be 40% right, does that mean I disregard that totally?
Okay, good question. If this gentleman says, we are in Calcutta, India right now, and if I say we're in Austin, Texas right now, we are not both right. We might both be wrong, but we're not both right because we contradict each other. So you cannot have a prophet claiming to reveal absolute truth and another prophet claiming to communicate absolute truth who contradicts the first one. You can't have them both being true.
Okay, you said we're either going to be there's not two rights. So then, following that assumption, then there's probably going to be somebody wrong. But then wouldn't that be, as you said earlier, there just seems like there's hypocrisy here, because wouldn't that mean that if that means you're not respecting what I'm believing, just like if you call me Tom, you're not respecting me. If you're not taking regard that what I believe, there again you're disrespecting what I'm believing.
Okay, good question. Your name is?
Saran.
Saran.
Yep.
All right. If I say, no, you're not Saran, you're Tom, that's disrespectful. Because what I'm doing is, I'm not allowing you to reveal to me who you are. If you tell me that you have put your faith in Allah, and I say, I disagree with you, that does not mean I don't respect you. Rather, it means when it comes to the issue of truth, you and I have a disagreement about what is true about God. Okay, let me just quickly make one shot at this. It's the issue of tolerance. How do we define tolerance? You and I live in a culture here in the United States that is increasingly misdefining tolerance, I feel. The misdefinition is as follows. Tolerance means that if you say God is a marshmallow man, and I say Jesus is God, you and I are saying the same thing. That's tolerance in America today. In my opinion, that's not tolerance. That's being brain dead. If you say that God is a marshmallow man, and I say that Jesus is God, tolerance for me as a follower of Christ means I respect your right to believe that God is a marshmallow man. And I will support your right to believe whatever you want to believe. And I'm not going to kill you over the issue. But I can promise you, I'm going to do everything within my power to ask you, why do you believe whatever it is you believe? What's your evidence to support what you believe? And I hope you'll do the same thing to me.
Okay, but when you said, okay, then you say that if I did believe he was a marshmallow man, I'm brain dead. Is that not in itself disrespectful?
No, I did not say if you believe that God is a marshmallow man, you're brain dead. That's not what I said. What I said was, if a person defines tolerance as my saying to you, after you say I believe God, the marshmallow man is God, and I say Jesus is God, if I look you in the face and say, well, bud, we're saying the same thing. See, that's not tolerance. That's being brain dead. That is being highly disrespectful. That is not respecting you enough to listen to what you believe, to understand what I believe, and to see that there's a contradiction. It's the death of thinking, the total death of thinking. And that is what we have more and more in America today. And I'm beginning to understand it a little bit, I think. I think it's because of this. More and more of us have experienced a lot of relational pain, a lot of arguments in our homes growing up. And therefore, we want peace. And we want peace so bad that we'll pay for that peace at almost any price. And the price that we're willing to pay is, forget about truth. Let's just agree. Let's just say we're saying the same thing, okay, man? You just be cool, I'll be cool, you chill out, I'll chill out, and let's shake and love each other.
But you don't have to do that without, I mean, you can, there's a point between concession and then compromise.
Okay, good. What's the difference?
Concession, you're what you just said. There's a lack of thinking, a lack of a logical thought to come to what you've come to. That's basically what I think concession is. Whereas compromise is, okay, listen, I see what you're saying, but I see what I'm saying. I think we're both right. Whereas you said people can't be right. We're both right in our own aspects. So I can take from you what you think and what I think and assimilate those thoughts into a common meaning.
Okay, good.
And accept that.
All right, here's my point. My point is, if he's an atheist and I'm a follower of Christ, we are not saying the same thing. He is saying there is no God. I'm saying there definitely is a God, and this God has revealed himself in Jesus. Now, for me as a follower of Christ, tolerance means I respect your right to be an atheist. I love you as an atheist. I want the best for you. But I also respect you enough to listen to what you say you believe and to realize that it's totally contradictory to what I believe, which is that there is a God and Jesus is this God. It is not tolerant for me to say, oh, my atheist friend, we believe the same thing. That's to be brain dead. We don't believe the same thing. He's an atheist, I'm a theist. So I've got to respect him enough, and I've got to think clearly enough to say, okay, now why are you an atheist? What's your evidence that atheism is true? And let me share with you why I think theism is true and why I put my faith in Jesus. That's tolerance.